So welcome to the Elevation Training Technology podcast. And on this episode today, I want to talk about the premise of cardio for fat loss. This is a very confusing topic for a lot of people because I think within the mainstream, media and within a lot of gyms and a lot of kind of not very savvy personal trainers, they often are promoting astronomical amounts of cardiovascular activity. And the way I see cardio is it is just a tool to burn more calories. It is not the cornerstone of any fat loss program. So it's not the main centerpiece element of any fat loss program. The main premise of a fat loss program, in my eyes, is one, having a diet what puts you in a small calorie deficit where you're losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, ideally. If you're quite heavy, you could lose maybe 3 to 4 pounds a week. But the main premise of any fat loss program is that you need to be in a calorie deficit with your diet. So you're eating between 250 to 500 calories less than you would normally eat. The second stage then, once you've done that and you put yourself in a calorie deficit, is to actually have a weight training program where you're training every muscle at least once to twice a week, if possibly more. But ideally, if you're an intermediate or beginner, you want to be training everything at least once to 2 times a week. So that means the guys, you need to train your legs, and girls, you need to train your upper body. Once that is in place and you're losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, you're doing your weight training program, you're trying to get stronger from week to week, and you're in a calorie deficit and all that good stuff, when you hit a plateau or a sticking point, that's when I would add the cardio in. The problem with a lot of people is that when they start a fat loss program, they go like a bull in a china shop and it's all chips on the table, and they go all in on doing astronomical amounts of activity. So they'll end up doing like 5 days of weight training. They'll do 5 days of cardio on a treadmill, and then they'll do classes, and then they'll do swimming. And at this point, their diet is already very, very low in calories, and they're creating an astronomical calorie deficit, and they're losing weight left, right, and center. But the problem is when you're doing that is that you're actually putting yourself in too much of a calorie deficit. Remember that your muscle mass actually requires energy to survive. So when you're stripping too many calories away, you're actually going to be stripping a lot of muscle mass away. Fat loss in and of itself is a catabolic process. It's kind of a destructive process on your body. It's breaking down fat tissue. It's using your fat stores for energy. So we need to be in a calorie deficit where we're not taking in quite as much energy, so we're using our fat as fuel, if that makes sense. But too high a risk, if you're not getting enough protein, your calories are way too low, and you're doing this astronomical activity, you're going to be eating away a lot of your muscle mass. And the idea for me in a fat loss program is you need to maintain your muscle mass as much as possible while losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, ideally. So what I would do is use cardio as a tool when you hit a plateau with your weight loss. So you want to max out your weight training as much as possible. So you want to be doing a program ideally where you're training 3, maybe to 6 days a week. But for a beginner, I would recommend 3 to 4 days. I think the ACSM guidelines, they recommend 2 days, but I think that is a little bit too much. But what you could do for a 2-day program, you could do 2 full body workouts. I really recommend that. Do 1 exercise per muscle group. You could do an upper day and a lower day, but I would recommend doing 3 to 4 days. You could do what I recommend is an upper lower split. So you do 2 upper body days, so 2 full upper body days and then 2 full lower body days. You're training every muscle twice a week. You could also do a split routine where you do chest, shoulders, tricep one day. You're doing chest one day, shoulders one day, back one day, legs one day, and then you may throw arms in on a different day or on one of the days where you're doing, you could do I'm trying to think of a way to do this. I haven't done a split routine in a very, very long time. You could do chest and triceps one day. You could do back and biceps one day. You could do shoulders one day, and then you could do legs one day. So once you have done your routine, you're doing that consistently, you're in a calorie deficit with your diet, and you're losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, and then you hit a sticking point, that's when I would introduce some kind of cardiovascular activity. And what I recommend is some kind of low-impact cardio. The problem with, I think, a lot of treadmill runners is they don't have a lot of good technique. You should be doing some kind of heel-toe action where you're absorbing a lot of the impact. A lot of people run poorly, and then they have terrible shin splints. They have really bad knee joint problems and stuff like that. And really, to be honest, you should be doing something, in my opinion, which is a bit more low impact, or working on your technique on a treadmill. So, what I recommend is, if you were to do some kind of low impact, using some kind of elliptical, so a cross trainer, a back supported stationary bike, or you could just use a normal stationary bike, but it's a bit more pressure on your lower back. As well, you could be doing a rower, but you could also use the treadmill, but you need to have really good heel-toe action. It should not be your toe hitting the treadmill first. It should be heel-toe, 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 back upright, chest out, good posture, things of that nature. And at that point, I would start out maybe doing 1 to 2 sessions a week, and I would do some kind of, there's different forms of cardio as well, which I'm going to talk about. I would start out doing low-intensity cardio. If you're already doing intense weight training, it's very anaerobic, meaning you're training without the presence of oxygen. It's very intense on your body. You can't really go long. If you're doing proper weight training and you're doing, sets, 1 or 2 reps shy of failure, you're doing maybe heavy lifting, you're doing big compound exercises, combined together within a workout. It's quite metabolically demanding, and it's very taxing on your nervous system. So when you're doing, which is the opposite, when you're doing high intensity cardio, things like interval training, extremely high intense circuit training, sprints, hill climbs, whatever it is, it's actually using the same energy system as weight training. It's very anaerobic. You're training without the presence of oxygen. Whereas you burn a tremendous amount of calories through that in the workout and after the workout, because you're using the same energy system. There's a lot of post-oxygen consumption after the workout because it was so demanding. You end up, with that kind of training, you tire yourself out very quickly, and it can be very taxing. With not having as many calories in the diet, your recovery is going to be taking a bit of a hit. Usually when you're in a mass building phase where you're eating more than you burn as opposed to less than you burn, you have more calories to play with. So when, you're in a fat loss phase, you want to be trying to also, you want to be doing, ideally, the least amount of exercise on the highest amount of calories while losing 1 to 2 pounds a week. Now, that sounds a bit kind of counterintuitive, but the idea is you want to be trying to maintain your muscle mass, your recovery as best you can while you're losing weight. There's no reason at all to drop calories left, right, and center if you can get away with higher calories. So, you want to be eating as much as you can while losing 1 to 2 pounds a week while doing your weight training, and then adding cardio in strategically. It should be this intelligent thing. Fat loss isn't this coincidental thing where, it just happens so blasé and you lose 60 pounds one day. It's a very systematic, very patient, strategic thing you do over a consistent period of time. And it's a lot more, tactical than what people think. I think it isn't just, like I said, this casual thing. You just starve yourself to death and then do this astronomical amount of exercise. Because what ends up happening is people spike their weight loss by doing that, but they can't sustain it. And because they've then stripped a lot of muscle from their body, because they've run too high of a calorie deficit, because they're doing too much exercise and their calories are so low, they end up stripping a lot of muscle mass from their frame. So now when their body doesn't need as much energy, and they actually gain weight a lot easier. So you want to be preserving your muscle as much as possible, if not gaining a little bit while you're losing weight. So that being said, I would recommend starting out doing 1 to 2 sessions of low intensity cardio between 20-30 minutes, and then monitor the response at the end of the week. Weigh yourself. What are you weighing in as? Are you losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, or are you losing 1 pound or 0.5 pounds, whatever it is? If you're stalling, then you could probably get a bit more aggressive with your cardio. But again, it's like you're tracking your weight from week to week. I recommend doing it the same day every week. You can do it every day. I know some bodybuilders do that, but I would recommend tracking the major one. If you want to weigh yourself every day, if you want to torture yourself and do that, fine. I would recommend though trying to stick to one day. You track that as your primary weight weigh-in. So, for example, what I like to do typically in a fat loss phase, I will train probably Monday through to Saturday, and what I like to do is have my high days on a Friday and a Saturday, and then have a low day, my normal day, on a Sunday. So that's a higher carb day on a Friday and a Saturday, and then have kind of like a washout day on Sunday where I just eat normally and don't train, and then back on. So when I back onto the routine on Monday, and before I train or anything, I eat. drink anything without my clothes on after I've been to the bathroom. On a Monday, that's when I'll weigh myself. And you want to weigh yourself after you've been to the bathroom, before you eat a drink, no jewelry on, to get the most accurate weigh-in. And I would take that as kind of like your primary weight loss tracking number from week to week. And you want to be checking that to see if you're progressing. If you don't track it, it's kind of the phrase, whatever doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. So it is incredibly important that you're tracking your progress, and then that way, if you're not losing enough, if you're not losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, you can get a bit more aggressive with your cardio if you really want to. So you might do, say, 30 to 40 minute sessions of low intensity cardio, low impact cardio. Now, people ask about interval training as well, when to incorporate that. Now, I wouldn't be doing interval training any more ideally than 1 to 3 sessions max. To be honest, it depends on your level of fitness. It depends on your level of how much you enjoy it, I guess, and stuff like this. But really, you're doing the same energy system as your weight training. So you want to be using it strategically, and you do not want to blow out your recovery so early on in your fat loss program. Now, if someone is doing, I will talk about deloads on a different episode. That's where you have like an active recovery week and give your body some time to rest while still going to the gym. But I would only use interval training once you've kind of done a bit of low intensity training. If you're a bit more experienced, you may be able to do the reverse and do that first. But, you want to be doing that as kind of if you're behind the back burner and you're already doing low intensity cardio, you're already in a calorie deficit, you're already doing your weight training program. At that point, when you've done that you're quite aggressively into your fat loss phase, you could add in an interval session. I would start out, if I would give kind of like an ideal protocol, I would try and do it maybe after your weight training. Make sure you do some dynamic stretches before you go on and do it. So hip flexors, quadriceps, hamstrings, lower back, and then, do your intervals. So if it was on a cross trainer, like I said, what you could do is do a warm up for 2 to 3 minutes, get everything warmed up, just really, really low intensity, just going through the motions on it, and then do an all out burst, on the cross trainer for 1 minute. And then you have 1 minute recovery, rest and repeat. And you do that maybe about 5-7 times. It depends on your fitness level, but for around 20 minutes or so, at least maybe, or 15 minutes if you've done a weight training session before. And then after that, you want to do a 2 to 3 minute cool down, and then you just lower the intensity, and then that's it. And then monitor the response. And then you go from week to week doing these very small changes, just adding incrementally little bits of cardio here and there, and as well, additionally, you can actually lower your calories as well. But again, it's like an art form. You have to, it's not just a science. You have to be willing to monitor your progress and add cardio in strategically. So at the end of your fat loss program, you're not doing this astronomical amount. And it makes it easier to maintain long term. If you're doing excessive amounts at the start, you'll have to maintain that weight loss throughout the program. And then when you get to the end of your fat loss phase, which some people never do, I'll talk about that on another episode as well. Some people just continually try and lose weight, and they just go in these binging and fat loss cycles all the time. But you have to be doing it strategically, and ideally you want to be doing it incrementally to the point that you're not rushing it, you're doing it very strategically and doing the minimal amount, you're doing the minimal effective dose, and you're playing around with your calories. And it's a very gradual thing, especially with calories. You don't want to be dropping calories left, right, and center. Anytime I make an adjustment in a client's calories or my own, it's only between, I might drop 50 calories or something like that, or 100 calories, but it's very small. It depends. It really, really depends on your goal, how many calories you're working with. If you're a small woman, it might be different, things of this nature. There's a lot of variables to take into account. So I hope that has made sense. So just to reiterate what I said, focus on a calorie deficit first, focus on a strategic weight training program where you're working every muscle on your body 1 to 2 times a week. 1 to twice a week, and then at that point, when you hit a plateau or a sticking point, I would use cardio strategically, trying to do some form of low intensity cardio first and add in interval training as a supplementary option when you hit a sticking point once you've done your cardio too. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to leave it there. I'll speak to you soon. Make sure to like this podcast and share it with your friends. Speak to you soon.